segments when they involve Baylor. Also brought to you by Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac. People you can count on Loop 340 Imperial Drive in Waco. Seth Russell, a great player at Baylor, a part of Baylor Athletics pregame show. He joins us. Greg Smoke, Paul Catalina, David Smoke on 365 Sports.
I think we need to do it better for Seth.
What do you mean?
I mean, we need to say Seth Russell, the greatest quarterback in Baylor history.
Hey, now.
Would you
don't stretch too far?
Yeah. Would you just say, "Hey, thanks, Paul"?
Yeah. I'll fight Bryce Petty right here.
You know who would be upset? Don Truhl. Yeah. Don Truhl would say, "Wait a minute."
Yeah.
Who was a heck of a Seth, when you watch Baylor right now, you are on teams that made quite the run, obviously. Memorable wins and memorable seasons, and you were a part of that run that Baylor had up until everything fell apart. What does this do to you just as a former player?
You know, you try to find the positive, right? I mean, it's frustrating to see, not to discredit any of those players and guys out there. I know they're trying their hardest and they're doing what they can with what they're being coached to do. But on the flip side, it kind of gets old, right? I mean, whenever you work really hard as a program to build it up to what it was, and then everything kind of started to fall apart, and it's just been really hard to kind of build back up to that level again, other than 21. And so, but it's on our end. I mean, we're, as a former player who's been a part of the program, it's not easy to win. It is extremely hard, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of a program that was about winning, right? And we won consistently. And I think watching the past, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of ups and downs, there just hasn't really been any consistency on the winning side. So when you don't really know what winning feels like, it's hard to know how to shoot for it. And so, I know these guys are doing their best. They're trying the hardest. And it's just the outcomes just haven't been what we've expected from a Baylor, from a Baylor fan base who is used to winning and scoring a lot of points and doing all that on a more fun level.
Seth, this team, if you go back, Colorado game was the kind of place where it really got exposed. They've got guys, and look, Shadir Sanders, Travis Hunter, all those guys, but even LeJontay Wester and other players are huge. They, in the moment, know it's time to make a play, and they go do it. In that same game, Baylor, given those same opportunities, did make those plays. Is that something you have, or is it something you can learn?
A little bit of both. To be put in those positions, those have to be, if you don't know how to work in those certain circumstances, or you've never been in that type of circumstance, then how do you react? Right? It's kind of you do it, you learn it by doing it. And so, whether that's, not performing, in practice, or preparing for it, practice, on a daily basis. I mean, we didn't do a whole lot of back in my day, we didn't do a whole lot of Hail Mary setups or anything like that. But at least we were ingrained to do it at least maybe once or twice, maybe 3 times, in the preseason, just throughout the week. And so, but then again, you have to be a dog, right? You have to, your football IQ has to be at a level to where, even if you've never been in that circumstance before, you probably watched enough football, right, to know that Hail Marys are going to be a part of the game. And how are you going to react whenever your name is called? What's your 111th? What are you supposed to do? And just go out and make a play. And I think, just maybe the moment got too big for some of those guys, or maybe they just weren't, put in a position to execute at a high level.
Seth, do you think this team has an identity right now?
I don't think so. From the outside looking in, now the guys inside, they could probably say differently because they're a part of that program. But it's hard to find an identity when where there's more losses than wins.
Right.
Consistently over the past 4 to 5 years, it's hard to find an identity. I mean, because if you're not winning, then you don't want to have that identity that you're basing your foundation around. You want to find a different one that is revolved around winning. And so I don't think they do. I think they have an idea of what they want to be. I know at least on the offensive side, I mean, Sawyer is holding that program together. I mean, let's be honest, right? He's slinging the ball around. He's got a lot of weight on his shoulders. I think he's handling it extremely well with what he's been given. Our run game has just been non-existent the past couple of weeks. I think our leading rusher averages 2.6 yards a carry in conference play, which is not great. And so, the identity, I don't think they have one just yet.
You had, and there was a run where you had large, as Steve Sarkisian now says, as Texas is building up, large human beings in front of you, whether they were junior college players that transferred or guys that just marinated for a year or two, but you had some absolute dudes in front of you on the offensive line. I don't see anything. There's guys with bodies that are big, et cetera, but do you see any dudes on the offensive line for Baylor?
Comparatively to when I played, no. But then again, it's a different style of football, right? I mean, our style was, you're going to smash you in the mouth, and we're gonna get. All of this is developed in the off season, right? Whether you're big, small. You look at some of those guys that came in, from freshman year. Looking back, I guess it would have been technically sophomore year, like Pat Colbert, for example. He came in weighing a $180, $190, right? He was not.
Yep.
Soaking wet, but he worked. He busted his tail. The program put him into the upper 200s, right? Maybe even close to 3, to where, he developed into his body. And so, it's I think just the development, whether that's off season, whatever it is. That's what's going to set you up for the type of play that you want. Now, granted, with Spav coming in this year, maybe the off-season regime is not set to what he's expected, right? And I think that can be set up after year 2 if we get there. And so, I don't see. I know they're wanting to be some dogs up front. I know they're wanting to get grimy, but let's just, not play dirty, but let's play, aggressive. Let's not get pushed around. Let's really do, and then maybe that's a scheme, right? I don't know. I'm trying to put the pieces together just like you guys are. And so, to answer your question, no, I don't see any comparatively to whenever I played.
Do you think that the coaching staff has done a better job this year of putting them in positions to win?
I think so. And you see that just from the style of play, right? And when you had Grimes in here last year, it was like watching paint dry. To be honest, it was not something exciting to watch. At least now, hey, they're throwing the ball down the field, right? They're letting Sawyer do what he does. Even when Shapen was here, he could sling it, but he was only able to do it whenever he had to. It wasn't built into the offense. And so, I like the trajectory. Now I know there's a lot of emotions tied into this season, right? With a lot of stakes that a lot of things on in the forefront, a lot of people on the hot seat right now, and I think it's you're seeing a different side, I think, of Aranda. Just being on the defense, he's trying to bring out some emotion, even though he's said in the past he is not that type of guy. And so he's really trying to do something different, which I think is helping the defense and helping the team at least see some fight, because we didn't see that last year, right? And so I think just all around, I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible, but we have to be realistic as well.
Yeah, eventually you have to have results, and it's crazy because if you want to be optimistic, it's like one play in the Colorado game and you win that. Like, make a field goal, catch a pass, and they win that game. And there's been 2 or 3 games where it's like just a single play, a single deep ball that's just a little bit off, and they win that game against BYU after a crazy comeback. It's that close, but that's also what makes it so incredibly frustrating. Sawyer Robertson, I think as a collective, weren't anticipating him being the guy, throughout the season maybe, and he basically has been. DeQuan Finn got hurt pretty much right out of the gates, and it's been Sawyer since then, really. What have been your thoughts on what you've seen from him? He seems to kind of be how he goes. The rest of the offense and the rest of the team almost seems to go.
Yeah, I've been happy with him. I said this a couple of weeks, I think, on the pregame show where, we haven't seen like Sawyer's full potential, right? Because I think that his defense, I mean, it's a new system. Everybody's trying to understand it. And I think, with what Spav wants to do with this offense, he's got to have some guys to take the top off the defense. And he just doesn't have that. I mean, Baldwin, you can argue, does, but I mean, he shows up once every 4 games, and it's just, it's something that, you need consistency. I mean, you got Hal Presley out there, you got Cameron. I mean, you got all these guys that I think are good possession receivers, right? No, they're not somebody that have 3 or 4 or 5 different gears like you did with like Corey Coleman and Kendall Wright and Katie Cannon and those guys that you put it out there.
Yeah.
They're coming down with it, right? And I mean, you think you're going to overthrow it by 15 yards, but they're going to find a way to get to it. And we just don't have those guys. And I think that really handcuffs what I think Sawyer's potential is with this offense, because he can swing it. He's shown that he's got the arm strength to really put the ball wherever he wants on the field. And it goes from, feeling free to let it rip down the field to where you have to put it on a receiver, that may not be able to stretch the field. That's what gets really difficult from a quarterback standpoint. But at least he's learning his receivers and what he can and can't do, stretching the ball down the field.
Yeah, you can't do this, but if you put Corey Coleman, Katie Cannon, oh my goodness, Godley, among others, out there, and had but they're not there. You can't do it unless you're playing Antoine Goodley, out there as well. 2013 and 14, you were a part of those Big 12 championship teams. They're being honored finally in November. There was a reason they had to wait, but they're going to be honored. We've had a few of them on. Bryce Petty, of course, and you know him. Ahmad Dixon. What are your thoughts about finally having some of these guys come back and be honored, rewarded, etc., with a ceremony in November against TCU?
Yeah, it's about dang time. No, I'm excited. I mean, it's so cool to be a part of a program like that. And then, arguably the 15 and 16, we had a chance as well, but, numbnuts over here decided to run the ball a couple times, put the season at jeopardy, but we don't have to go there. But, I'm excited for those guys. I mean, they busted their tail, they were the leaders, right? I mean, those are the guys that, as they went, we went. And so it's, if they were having a bad day, we were all having a bad day. And they very rarely had bad days, which was really cool to see. But yeah, no, it's exciting to kind of get back out on the field and be recognized. And I don't know if y'all heard this or not, but Baylor decided that they're going to let us run the line. So
wow.
So that's going to be, I don't know if that's groundbreaking or anything, but that's going to be fun to finally be able to do that. We'll probably see a couple pulled hamstrings, maybe a trip or two, but
No.
So yeah, no.
I'll tell you what I've told everybody, Bryce. No flip flops. That's I know you're just now seeing it from up top, but my favorite thing is when you see the kids first week out of the gate, and they've worn their flip flops to the game, and they're going to decide that they're going to run end line to end line in flip flops,
and they're going to be a disaster.
And it's not going to end well.
Who's going to get in front of Cyril Richardson, or maybe make sure you're not in front of him or behind him? Because I mean, guys like those are some dudes. Those are the guys I'm talking about that weigh 300 and something pounds, big men.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to stay far away from him.
Seth Russell, former Baylor quarterback, with us, also a part of the Baylor Athletics pregame show on 365 Sports. I had said this before, and somebody in the chat room, Paxton, said, hey, bring it up again. They have a really nice class of 2025 that they hope they can seal and get to in December. But at the same time, Seth, I don't know what's going to happen if things continue to end up with one loss after another. Can you hold the school or the program hostage because of the hope of signing people in December?
It's you've probably heard this before. In the age of NIL, anything can happen, right? I mean, even if you had a record-breaking year, you can have some of these guys coming in and they can get taken. Like the Navasota. I mean, for example, right? I mean, he gets last minute gets bought by Oregon. It's just like, I mean, you want to try to do your best from a program standpoint. You want to try to keep these guys, within the program, whether coach is here or not. But I mean, it's I think it's really anybody's game whenever it comes down to, until that name is signed on the dotted line. Anything is possible, and anything can happen. And I think that you have to make a long-term play, right? What's best for the program. If it's loss after loss after loss after loss going through the end of the season, then you can kind of read the writing on the wall, right? But if it's like, hey, we went out, now it gets really gray area, right? It's like, hey, we're building a program. It's taken 4 or 5 years, but at least we're getting there. So now it's like, now there's harder decisions to be made. And then that could arguably, cause for, to keep those recruits, right? Because they're coming into a building program. They see what the potential could look like, what they could be a part of, changing it back to a winning program. So, I mean, there's a lot of different selling points. It just, it's all going to depend on what happens on the field the next half of the season.
Seth, Baylor right now, they just need a win. They're playing in Lubbock against Joey McGuire. Do you remember a game when you were running the show? You guys usually pretty much dictated almost every week. And yeah, there's going to be a game or two where somebody else was pretty good too. Do you remember a game during that 2-year stretch for you when you started where there was a game where you just felt like, man, we got to win this game or the wheels are going to fall off?
Yeah. I think it was my senior year when we played UT in Austin.
Yep. Yep.
That was, I mean, y'all could probably remember it, pretty vividly. That's when all the, another article came out, right? Another thing, just one after another. And I mean, I remember vividly, after that game, I mean, I don't think I played harder in any other game than that one. And we still came up short. And so, which, was completely defeating for the program. And it just, one after another. And then it just kind of started that domino effect. Because I think the next week was, I can't remember the next week. I think it was Oklahoma, or Oklahoma was coming up, and then I break my ankle, and it just kind of started to unravel from there. But I would say, yeah, the UT game in 16 was kind of that game that we had to win to continue forward, and we just weren't able to pull it off.
Yeah, that was the Wall Street Journal article that came out the day before you guys left for Austin.
Yep.
Can you try to describe that day at practice, or was there even a practice? I mean, that's the day before you're going to play, but I heard it was just just anger, frustration. We're not going to play. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I'm asking you.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of emotion tied to all of it. I don't know if it was much we didn't want to play. It was more of we wanted to play to try to right a wrong, right? To kind of prove ourselves. I mean, we had our conspiracy theories, which, some of it could be proven, some of it maybe not, just of like who were the ties to all the things being released and whatnot. But yeah, no, there was a lot of frustration. I remember we were already at the hotel in Waco. I think we just gotten back from our walkthrough. We were going through our film breakdown, walking to it. I remember everybody just being super frustrated. And I finally got the news of what happened and the release of the article. And it was just, everybody was just, really upset of, how could people say things when they have no idea what's even going on. And just, but sometimes that's the media. They speak out of one end and they don't really know the other end of the facts, but that's just part of it. And so, it was not a fun evening, to say the least.
Had you been able to close out that game in Austin? Because you guys, it just seemed like you were so close so many times of like the dagger. There was a fumble near the goal line, and I forgot if it was Shock or Shock didn't even play in the second half, but there was a fumble. If you guys could have won that game, do you feel like it would have been held together longer, or was that inevitable?
I think so. I definitely think so. Because that just would have given us more ammunition to, because Bryles, Art was always saying, hey, go out and prove yourself, right? Hey, we're always the underdog. We're always going to be bet against. Go out and prove yourself, of why you should be on the field. Nobody wants us out there, I mean, nobody wants to play against us. They were all scared of us, but they're going to do everything they can to tear us down. And so, that was just one shot that I feel like, with the loss, with the L in the loss column, that just it started to slowly, and then like I said, one thing after another. With me breaking my ankle, and then it just slowly started to kind of slip off the face of of the mountain.
Seth, I think you kind of mentioned it there at the very beginning, but as much as it's tough to look back on some of those things, all the great memories that you also have to look back on, just what's kind of the mood amongst the guys that you keep in touch with, and just the feeling about having this opportunity here in a couple of weeks to just all be back together, be back at McLean, and be celebrated.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we were all talking about is who's going to pull the hammy the first.
Yeah.
Running the line, and then of course everybody gets back together. I mean, it's been what 14? Oh, my math, 10 years, 10 11 years since we've really been back together.
Isn't that crazy?
So
10 years.
It's every time I say it just kind of surprises me, but. Yeah, I mean, everybody's excited. It's good to get back, and obviously against a good team against TCU. You got some. It's cool to kind of, inadvertently, support, Kendall and Buckles and Cos and those guys who are going by the TCU sideline, and still kind of include them in on the, without actually including them, which was kind of a part of the design as well, which we're really excited about. So, because they were a big part of the winning program and tradition at Baylor. And so, we're all pumped, man. We're just, it's finally here, and hopefully we can leave, McLean Stadium, happy with a win.
And I don't know if you broke the news with the line or not, but I just want to be clear. So we are going to break the news that the 13 and 14 teams, when they're honored on November the 1st against TCU, you guys will be running the Baylor line. That's what you said, right?
That is correct.
Wow.
So, don't shoot the messenger.
Okay, yeah, no.
No,
I think it's cool. I think it's cool.
Absolutely going to quote you.
Seth Russell.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hey,
go ahead.
And Seth Russell said he's going to beat Corey Coleman.
Yes.
In the race.
Yes.
That's the other thing.
Coleman, Goodley, all those guys.
Katie Cannon.
Yeah.
Tevin Reese.
I did say that.
Yes.
I did say that.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm telling you what, that would have been, those were the days, right? I have to ask you, because we brought up the anniversary against TCU, the celebration. What were your thoughts for a guy that Baylor football hated in Gary Patterson being at Baylor practicing during the spring?
Oh shoot, I think it's just college rivalry, right? I mean, anywhere you go, if you have an opposing team that is a rival, I mean, you're not going to like them. Whether it's if you had Jesus over there, I mean, you probably wouldn't like him. I mean, let's just be honest. And so, but I mean, it's, but I think, Gary, I haven't met him. I mean, I met him a couple times just like at, like media days and things like that. But I never met him whenever he was like on staff at Baylor. But I mean, I heard nothing but good things. I mean, there's a reason why he was a phenomenal defense. He's a phenomenally defensive-minded coach. I mean, that is his MO, and he always gave us trouble when we played them. And so I think it was smart for Aranda to bring him in, at least to be a consultant at whatever level he was, just to kind of help bring an edge to that defense, because that's what they needed, right? They needed some outside input, some guys who were really, really smart on the defensive side, and he falls in one of the best defensive coaches, I think, in Big 12, history. So I mean, I have no ill will towards him. I mean, he's never done anything to me. I think just from the the Baylor TCU rivalry, you just have a natural, I wouldn't say hate, but a unlikeness for somebody who's not a part of your private school program.
That's why you're classy as you could be, man. Appreciate it. Really appreciate the insight and some of your feelings towards so much that's going on this year, but also later in the year and also during your great run. There's always a little bit of what could have been, but I know that you're very, very deep with your faith, and I don't know if you even go there. Do you?
I mean, every once in a while, I think I think it's natural, humanly, to go back and look at the what if. But I mean, I take it as like, I go back and look at the what if, but then I'm like, wow, like how blessed am I, right? With where I'm at in life. Like if those things hadn't happened, where would I be, right? Would I have a wife? Would I have amazing family? Would I have two kids that are extremely healthy and like we're thriving? And so, You know, it's never like what if in a negative way. It's just like, that would have been cool, but life would have been completely different, right? And Lord had a different plan for me, and this is where He's led me. And I mean, I'm never going to go against that.
I'll never forget when you proposed on top of the bridge, right? The Humphrey Bridge. That was awesome. That was awesome. Yep. Thank you very much, Seth. Appreciate your time. Loved watching you play. Appreciate your opinion, input, and also knowledge. Seth Russell,